This tutorial is for section S19, Standard Form, Graph and Equation for Algebra 1. The problems here are going to look like graph this function using intercepts, and you would have an equation like x minus 8y equals negative 8. So this is a three-step problem. In the last section in S18, you learned how to find the x-intercept or the y-intercept. And I told you soon you'll be using both of those to do something else. So from this equation, we'll need to find the x-intercept, then in a separate problem find the y-intercept, and then use those 2 points to graph our line. So if you remember from the last video, we talked about the place where it crosses the x-axis is the x-intercept, and the place where it crosses the y-axis is the y-intercept. So to plot a line, we need 2 points, right? So if we have the x-intercept and the y-intercept, that will be enough to make a straight line. So by hand, what I would do is use my ruler, but on IXL, if you're doing this on your computer, you'll just put a dot here and then plot your other point here, and it automatically draws the line for you. So let's look at this in the 3 steps. So this was our original equation. I rewrote it here, and then I found the x-intercept. Now, obviously you could do the y-intercept first or the x-intercept. You just need to know both of these points to be able to plot it. So x minus 8y equals negative 8. To find my x-intercept, I plug in a 0 for my y. So I would have x minus 8 times 0 equals negative 8. That would leave me with x equals negative 8. So if I was drawing this out, I could put a dot there at negative 8 because I know that's my x-intercept where it crosses the x-axis. Step 2, I'm going to find my y-intercept. We do that by plugging in a 0 for our x. So x minus 8y equals negative 8. So 0 here for our x, leaving us with negative 8y equals negative 8. I told you about combining some steps, so I didn't write an extra line here, but I would have canceled that out. Divided both sides by negative 8 to get y by itself. Negative 8 divided by negative 8 is positive 1. So I use my x-intercept and my y-intercept to plot those 2 points there to graph my line. So again, the negative 8, that's my x-intercept. The positive 1, that's my y-intercept where it crosses the y-axis, and those 2 points you can use to form your line. So now let's speed up a little bit now that you know all the background for why we do those 3 steps. Number 2, 10x minus 3y equals negative 30. So I rewrite it, solve for my x, rewrite it, solve for my y, and then plot my points. So first, 10x minus 3, and then we plugged in a 0 for our y, equals negative 30. This cancels out, so 10x equals negative 30. I would divide both sides by 10, leaving me with negative 3. So my x-intercept is at negative 3. Now to find my y-intercept, I plug in 0 for the x. So 10 times 0 minus 3y equals negative 30. This cancels out, leaving me with negative 3y equals negative 30. I would divide both sides by negative 3. That would leave me with positive 10 because a negative divided by a negative, remember, is a positive. So I would use my y-intercept point, y equals 10, to plot my second point. And then if I was graphing by hand, which I did here, I would use a ruler to connect those 2 dots. But remember, if you're doing it on the computer, when you plot that second point, it will automatically connect them to form your line. Number 3, x minus 9y equals negative 9. First, I'll plug in 0 for my y to get my x-intercept. So x minus 9 times 0 equals negative 9, which would leave me with x equals negative 9 once this is canceled out. To find my y-intercept, I plug in 0 for my x, leaving me with negative 9y equals negative 9. I would divide both sides by negative 9, leaving me with 1 as my y-intercept. So to plot those points, I would plot negative 9 on my x-axis and positive 1 on my y-axis. Excuse me, my final example here, number 4. 4x plus y equals 4. So I plug in a 0 for my y, leaving me with 4x equals 4. Divide both sides by 4 and I get 1. So on my x-axis, I would plot my point at 1. To find my y-intercept, I would plug in 0 for the x. So 4 times 0 plus y equals 4, leaves me with y equals 4. So my other point that I would plot would be at 4 on my y-axis. Then I would connect those, and that would form my line. And that's it.